Hey guys, it's Krystal Lucier here, also known as your Home Sweet Home 519 Realtor. Krystal Lemore. This is Realtor Life, a fun and entertaining look at life in the trenches as a real estate professional or entrepreneur in Ontario. And guys, I'm so excited. We have an amazing guest with us today. This man is fantastic, my friend and colleague, Kevin Bulmer. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, Crystal. It's nice to see you. Thanks for the kind words.
Oh, I'm very excited about our chat. We were just talking before we actually pressed record here about how we have all these great chats and now you all get to be part of it. So it's really fun.
But no
Um,
pressure.
no pressure at all.
That's
No,
got to be a
zero
great
pressure.
chat, right?
It does have to be a great chat. So we're gonna make that happen. Kevin, so I kind of got introduced to you way back when doing entrepreneur stuff with Awesomepreneurs.
Mm.
And for anyone that doesn't know, Awesomepreneurs was a London staple before COVID. It was very cool, a great community. And then when it stopped, Kevin, you went and took the torch for Mo Mondays. And Mo Mondays is near and dear to my heart because I used to run Mo Mondays. I met my husband at Mo Mondays. Like it's huge, huge. And then you kind of pivoted and created another great, great thing for all of these eager networkers called Little Engines. Um, and everything is just so amazing for the community here in London. So tell us first of all, you have tons of energy. It seems like you never stop. Simpatico here. But where did this all start? I know you didn't start in the networking area. So why don't you walk us back to young Kevin? Where are your beginnings?
Yeah, when you said where does it all start, my immediate thought was probably when I was about 6 or 7 years old, when my grandfather gave me a transistor radio. I used to listen to the Detroit Tigers games all night. So I didn't carry a teddy bear around. I hauled this little radio around.
That's amazing.
And I've tried to reverse engineer how I kind of became this whatever I am. And I think that it goes back to that time, Crystal, that I think part of what I'm trying to do is provide that voice, that space, that comfort, that something that becomes kind of like part of the soundtrack of your life that's there when you want it,
Yes.
but you don't always have to be completely engaged in it. Um, the thing about baseball, and I don't follow it very closely anymore, but they play like all the time. So when you're a kid and you don't have responsibilities, you have more time to invest into things like that. And so I didn't listen to every pitch of every Tigers game, but they were good back then. They won the World Series when I was 10 years old, and there was a sort of magic I felt like to this voice that I couldn't see, but creating these pictures in my mind. And whenever I would turn the dial and want to tap in, it felt like that voice was there. And I wasn't aware of that back when I was the little guy, of course, but now that I'm older, I think I realize that there's a value to that of just having something that is well-meaning, that it represents something positive to you. So I laugh
Yeah.
now to myself when we do things with the Little Engines online community, and whether we present a say a Zoom networking call or a Q&A with one of the members, and I every time we do something, I get emails from people who are in the community apologizing that they can't be there, as if they've got some sort of obligation to me. And I'm wanting to give them this whole speech. No, 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 no. Like there's no expectation of participation by you on my part. I just want you to know that it's there. I just
Yeah,
want you to know we're here. I just want you to know that that's
we've got you. Yeah,
yeah, it's running in the background, and so that it can work for what works for you. That's all. And
absolutely.
so I think it kind of goes back to that, because initially I did go into radio and I was really good at it, and I kind of rose to the top of the ladder fairly quickly hosting the morning show, and I was bored to tears. And I think I just wasn't interested in what they were asking me to be interested in.
Yeah.
And back then, this predates internet, cell phones, podcasts, in long form discussions, which I love. I'm the kind of person that will consume a 3 hour podcast in 4 or 5 or 6 or however many different bits while I'm taking out the garbage or going for a walk or driving the car or making dinner.
Always learning. Yep, that's the key.
But back in when we were growing up, everything was in little bite-sized prepackaged bits, and it was really difficult to really kind of get a real sense of someone. And so I think
Yeah.
that and a whole bunch of other things have kind of gone into the soup of why I felt called to build community and try to encourage people, and I guess be a bit of a voice. Goes all the way back to that radio, I guess.
That's amazing. Well, and I think what's important too, like, so I definitely want to lean into a little bit more of what makes like kind of what sets your soul on fire, what you're passionate about. But just to go into like this community that you've created, anyone listening, so if you're not out there networking, or networking sounds scary or boring, what Kevin's talking about is really what you have to do. Like you get out there, you find communities, you because there is, I mean, I'd like to think that our community is very unique, but there are communities all over North America where if you go and you put yourself out there, you'll find something that's similar to, not as good as, but similar to Little Engines or similar to like an Awesomepreneurs where you're just getting out there and meeting people. That's what networking is, right? Like it's not, you don't need a scientific background in how to connect with people to get out there, but it's scary. So thank you for putting these places together that kind of, like you said, it's always there. It's not, there's no barrier to entry. It's like if you have a business and you're a person, come on in.
Yeah, I just think it's about building and nurturing good relationships.
Yeah.
I
That's what
think
it is. That yeah.
that's all sales is. That's,
Yep.
you're in real estate, it's relationships.
Yes.
And I feel strongly that when we as small business owners and entrepreneurs and representatives, when it comes time to try to communicate about what we do, we look around at what others are doing. We could talk for 3 hours just on all this, but just, and part of it I feel is because we don't fully trust our own voice, who we are, what it is that we have to say, and we kind of
Yeah.
become parrots for clones, copies of what we see others doing. And a lot of it is just call to action, call to action, call to action, professional stuff in real estate, market stats, open house, just listed, sold, price
Yeah.
improvement, whatever it is. And all of the things that are necessary in that line of things. But I think it's helpful to back up and take a larger perspective. And if you've ever been in business development or you've worked as a sales representative, if you really think about it, I think that you'll realize that most of it is just building relationships. Very little of it is
Yes.
asking for the order. When we go on to
Yeah.
say social media, we're almost constantly in call to action. But my experience in being a sales rep, which I never wanted to be, but it's funny how funny how we all sort of end up having to do that
Yeah.
in one way or another. It's getting to know each other. You
Yes.
understand somebody else's favorite vacation spots or the names of their kids and whether
Yep.
they're in dance or hockey or cheerleading or whatever. And when the relationship is built and when there's a fit, asking for the order just kind of becomes as easy as saying the next sentence.
It's
And
so
so
true.
I really am trying to build that spirit into uh, what we call the Little Engines small business support community and the Little Engines live events. I even just saw over this past weekend somebody reposting that quote and that meme, which I love because I love Simon Sinek. If people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Yes.
I always want to take it a level beyond and I say, no, what they're buying who you are.
Yep.
That's the level that I want to see because I feel like if we can communicate and express, and this sounds easy to say,
Yeah.
but I've found it takes a lot of courage to do. We can really express and communicate who we really are, what our character is, what our values are, what our interests
100%.
are, that all of the other, what we do, how we do it, and why we do it will just all kind of come along for the ride as part of that story. But I've
It's true.
found that it takes a lot of bravery to do that.
It does, but I also find I think it does take bravery, but you've experienced this, and I will say I've experienced this for myself, but I've witnessed it as well. So one thing, and I'd love to talk more about this, but leaning into your passion. So you love speaking and you love impacting an audience. And I can tell you that for all the community building you do and all the amazingness of bringing everyone together and all of those things, What really, really shines with you is when you're doing what you are called to do in front of us, right? So when you weave that authenticity in, like something that you were supposed to, you're here to do, and you're able to do it and kind of give back in that way, it makes such a difference. So for anyone, like if your gift is like, for example, my gift is maybe connecting people or that positivity. So if you can authentically put that in to what you're doing, so like with your community, it's your care and your heart, but when you're out there public speaking and sharing a piece of you, it it changes the room. And it could be someone else doing it where that's not really their gift. And it doesn't mean that they wouldn't be trying hard. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't be being good. But when you're doing what you're supposed to do, that's you feel it, right? So it doesn't, it's not just a, hey, come on out, guys, like get into groups. It's you being you. And I think if everyone really was able to take the time and figure out what they're supposed to be doing instead of, like you said, like doing the things that they think they're supposed to be doing, that's when that's when miracles happen, right? Like that's when the shift happens.
Well, that's really nice.
It's
Thank you.
true.
Yeah, well, thank you. Um, it's all just part of trying to access, I think, what we're talking about.
Yes.
What can I be doing that is that I've been uniquely called to do, and
Yeah.
what's the way that I'm interested in doing it? I was going to say I'm not trying to be different. That's not entirely true. There are some things related to the events that we do that I
Yeah.
observe from other things that I'm like, like, I go to other events and, they talk about themselves and it seems a little self-congratulatory, or you get like, can I have your attention, please? We're going to get started in 10 minutes, or this, that, and the other. We we change the lights and we turn rock and roll music up, and I just start like, if you're ready, great, and if you aren't,
Yeah.
fine. And that's not for everyone. We've had some we've had some people find us online by searching small business networking events and maybe looking for something that's more of a, biz after five or something like that. And then all of, there's a vibe to what we're doing. And next thing you know, there's rock and roll music playing and there's some jackass dancing around on stage in a helmet and a safety vest, and it's kind of like, what's going on? And then um but what I like to say about that is that for the people that come and they connect with it, they vibe with it. I think
Yeah.
that if they do, I think that what they're sensing is the sincerity.
Yes.
That if you connect with that, then there's no way, like, you don't need me to explain it. I don't need
Yeah.
an elevator pitch. And if you don't, like, if it's just not resonating with where you are and what you're looking for,
Yeah.
that's totally cool too. That's why there's so much choice of other things that could maybe be a better fit.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, there's probably no way I can explain it to you that's going to
Yeah.
make you vibe with it. And so there's something about that whole thing, Krystal, that um it just, and I was kind of like this with Mo Mondays, but I feel it more with the little engines. That there's almost a certain irreverence, a detachment. Because as you've seen, I wear my heart on my sleeve and I get pretty emotional sometimes, um, to a fault where as somebody who works in customer service himself, you can really tear yourself apart when you care, and
Yes.
there needs to be sort of some level of detachment and irreverence. Otherwise, you'll sort of never get to that place of kind of free expression if you're always worried about what someone's going to think, or if you'll step on
Yes.
anybody's toes, or if it's okay. And believe me, I remember the first time I went on stage at Mo Mondays without a collared shirt that was tucked in.
Mm.
And I felt like I was naked. I just didn't think it was okay. It was still a collared shirt, but it was a short sleeve collared shirt, and I had it untucked, and I literally felt naked just because of the stories that were in my mind. And what I've learned is we all have our own versions of those
Yes.
things that we sort of compare ourselves
Yeah.
to, and we're all trying to work through something or other. So I want to
It's
provide something that helps people with whatever it is they're trying to wrestle through.
well, and that's the thing. So we actually talked about this. I can't remember if we talked about it on the podcast or if I've been just speaking with colleagues, but I did an activity this year that I really think everyone should do every year. But I kind of looked at my life and everything that I work towards and everything I'm a bit of an achievement-aholic, and I think a lot of us are as entrepreneurs, right? But I decided to go and look. I had this like epiphany moment, and I decided to go and look at what do all of my friends and family and clients say that they appreciate most about me. So I'll tell you, none of them said they like how busy I am. None of them said they appreciate all of my accomplishments and all of my degrees. Not one. None of them said that they like my organization or how I lead things, like, or how I'm regimented, like none. Every single one of them in some way said that they appreciate my positivity, my support, my encouragement, my enthusiasm, and my heart.
In other
And
words,
I
who
thought,
you are.
right? And so
Hmm.
I thought, wouldn't it be great if we all did that? Because the thing is, that's when I get so busy on the treadmill, and like we all get so busy on the treadmill trying to please all these people, are we giving that? Are we giving that essence to anyone? No, it's hidden away because we're so stressed out and exhausted. And so I thought, well, if that's what people appreciate, and that's when I'm happiest, right? You're happiest when you're on stage, like just pouring it out. Like if that's when you're happiest, why would I let anything step in the way of that? And so my challenge to myself this year, and my challenge to anyone, is figure out what is that? Like what sets your heart on fire?
Hmm.
And how can you give that to people more? Because that's what they want,
Hmm.
right? That's the most authentic version of what they're looking for from you. Instead of trying to fit ourselves into this thing that we think we're supposed to do. Like you were saying, like these calls, like all the with real estate, like you're getting this and this and this. And yeah, you have to do your job, but can you weave your authenticity into it? Right? Like you could get on stage, but if your goal is to help entrepreneurs and you're just getting on stage and no one knows you're helping entrepreneurs, you still have to do the activities, but bringing yourself into it, like that's where you're really changing lives because not only are you bringing people together, you're giving them your best you. And I think that's a huge lesson for people. If you're not sure where to start, go back and look at reviews. Go back to like, what do your friends say about you? What do your like family say, like, and the good things, not when they're annoyed with you, if you're your family, but, like, and I think it's such a powerful exercise.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
my question for you is, so we were talking about your passion for speaking, and you've been leaning more into that. So tell us more about the speaking. So what are you, um, beyond the stage at Little Engines? I know you've been doing some more events. What are you doing right now? What are you working on?
Yeah, still really trying to get the whole engine back refired again, to be honest with you, Crystal, that I was in the radio business. I worked in sales for a group of radio stations for many years while my boys were young. And then I got to a point where I started doing all of the work, getting into my early 40s. I'm 50 now while we're recording this, but, wondering what am I doing with my life, on and on and on. We could spend all kinds of time unpacking that. But it was 2017 I left that role and then went out on my own as a speaker coach kind of a guy. And that was an interesting couple of years. Um, Taking over as the host of Mo Mondays London was transformational in terms of starting to build some community, connecting with people like you, with our mutual friend, the late Kyle Blythe, who you mentioned, who ran Awesomepreneurs. Um, and I was really just getting to the point where I felt like I was cresting that hill, speaking regularly, finally, after basically free falling for a couple of years, bringing in a little bit more than what was going out. And then the pandemic hit.
Oh,
And
yep.
so I wasn't, so that shut down Mo Mondays. And I sometimes wonder if the London Music Club, where we used to host that, because it was a character in that show and that was done
Yeah.
very deliberately. Um, there, I wonder sometimes if it had made it through and it was still what it was then, if I'd have gone back to do Mo Mondays. But that's part of where the whole no schedule man thing comes in. People will say like, "What is that? What does that mean?" And I'll say, "Have you ever heard the phrase 'We make plans and God laughs'?" Like we think we know what we want. We think we know how things are supposed to
Oh
go, but
yeah.
we get the experiences that we get.
Yep.
And so there we were. And back at the time of the pandemic hit, I wasn't well established enough to make that go online. I did do some Zoom workshops and whatnot, but there was nothing sustainable.
Yeah.
And so a year or so into all of the lockdowns and all of that stuff, that's where NSM Brand Media was born. Now it existed as a sole proprietorship because a lot of the paid speaking engagements that I was doing, I get viewed by some as kind of a motivational speaker. I don't really care for that term, but loosely kind of uplifting, inspirational, that sort of a guy.
Yeah.
But with my background in media and sales and marketing, I was doing a lot of marketing messaging, not specifically social media, but I think my message essentially to small business people was know that the problem isn't the vehicle, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or radio or television. It's that you don't know what to say.
Yeah.
We're not communicating on those mediums like how we communicate like you and I are right now.
Exactly.
Let's talk like human beings. And so I would get some people would come to me and hire me to try to coach. So I was using that sole proprietorship a little bit for that.
Nice.
And but I didn't like it. I grew really frustrated with it because I realized what they really need is for somebody to do the work for them. And I was a one-man band back then. But I remembered that and I thought, aha, I was trying to tell these people prior to the pandemic that they needed some sort of an online communication strategy and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so put a business plan together and went and sold the first few client relationships, contracts, if you will, for NSM Brand Media, which essentially started out offering social media marketing and content creation for small and mid-sized businesses. And that
Nice.
went well.
Yeah.
It went well to the point where that just sort of gobbled me up. And when we started that, events and speaking wasn't even in the equation. And I was just trying to survive, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Who wasn't? Yeah. No kidding.
But that it built into a corporation, and I hope I don't sound like I'm making excuses, but that was really my sole focus. But the
Yeah.
pull, or I call it, like the calling
That inner, yep.
of like once I got, and I remember it was when John Reeser, who runs the BizCon events, he did one event here in London, and he had been introduced to me by Kyle, who we mentioned earlier, and so John asked me to speak and I remember he did that in April of 2022. I mean, we were still just with the government telling us it was okay to go outside again, and I went and I did a marketing talk, and it was just like it was like having a missing piece of my body reattached.
Yep.
And I think that's where what became the Little Engines was sort of reborn. It was like I gotta, like, well, Mondays is gone. Kyle died. Awesomepreneurs went with him.
Yeah.
There's a void here. There's something missing. Um, and believe me, Krystal, I wonder sometimes because it's a lot of work
Yeah.
running that community and whatnot, but I can't not do it. So
Do you know, I
I'm
just need to
really,
cut you off for 1 second because I just like you got emotional before that. I was getting so isn't it cool? So for anyone that didn't get to know Kyle Blythe, this man was a heart walking around on feet. Like he just cared so much and was so fired up and so all about connecting and making people feel supported. And isn't it amazing that as hard as you're working on this, you're you're carrying him with you. But even like us connecting and even you connect like he he continues to support us. And it's just when it is so rare to meet people like that and such a gift. And we can all only hope that when we're gone, we could have even like a tenth of the impact that this man has had on the community. Like I'm
I don't
blown
know if I
away.
can talk about him because I won't be
You
able to
don't
get
have
through
to.
it.
You don't have to. We love you, Kyle. But
Um,
no, it's
but that's definitely there was and there is a feeling of there's work to be done here.
yes. Yes, there
And
is.
if I don't pick the ball up, who else is going to do it?
Yep.
So when I look back, I'm extremely proud of. So like with NSM Brand Media, that has come with all of the nuts and bolts, good, bad, and otherwise, that anyone will experience when they're trying to start up a new business. At first, it was like, this is great. People are coming to us, and the lockdowns are lifting, and the world is turning again. And then after about a year and a half in, it became, I had a full head of hair, and now I don't. It's largely because of that experience. And at the same time, the little engines was what I was building first. And so, really, when I look back, I'm proud those things are built. Where I am now in this conversation is okay, how do I evolve as an individual? Because I've never considered myself a good delegator. I don't want to be a teacher. I don't want to be a coach. I don't want to be a leader. I just keep getting called to it. So I'm like, okay, um, I'll evolve so that I can grow those things. Um, and free myself up. I've been reading and going through Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time. And
Nice.
he's somebody I would recommend to anybody in the entrepreneurial space. I actually got to interview Dan back when I was doing a podcast years
Ooh,
ago.
that's cool.
But leaning into those kinds of things to see, okay, can I build those businesses? Can I bring, like, I'm always going to be the face of Little Engines, but to bring a community manager in and to bring an event manager in and to really
Yeah.
build it and then free me up to go and start speaking more because that's what I should be doing. I thrive
Yeah.
on these, like you're very kind with what you say about me being on stage.
It's true.
I enjoy, thank you. I, just the way that I see things where I'll use analogies and just think in terms of stories and have you ever realized how this is kind of like that? And, like with the little engines, it's based on the story of the little engine that could. And I have an interpretation of that story that I think is obvious that I almost didn't want to present because I'm like, this is too obvious. Everybody's going to call me out as a fraud and just, but that's that work of recognizing that calling and not judging it and letting your ego get in the way to just let it rip. And then,
Yeah.
uh, so um, for whatever reason, that's what I love doing the most, exploring these ideas
Yeah.
and expressing these metaphors and trying to, like you talked about, change the energy. And that's what I try to do, but I'm trying to do it in a way not so that anybody who's there or listening is looking for my model or my three steps or my, five secrets to success or whatever, but so that they can get a fresh perspective on whatever it is that they're being called to because it's in there somewhere.
Yes.
And I just, I've been around long enough to know or have the opinion, I guess, that all of us are trying to resolve that or like metaphorically
Yeah.
climb some mountain of our own.
Absolutely.
And we
Absolutely.
all know what it is if we're being honest with ourselves and we're sitting alone in the dark. And if we're in tune with
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it, intuition, God, the universe, source, gut instincts.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a lot of courage, at least initially, to allow yourself to go there. And I want to be a cheerleader for people like that. And
Yes.
I want to bring other people who can not only also be cheerleaders and encouragers, but can provide helpful resources and
Yes.
recommendations and expertise and insight. And
Yes.
it's starting to happen. So,
I think
uh,
one of the things that happens, and I don't know about you, I know with me, when you have a gift and you don't lean in to what it is, sometimes you think either everyone has this, so it's not a gift,
yeah,
right? It's so like, and I mean, our son is dealing with that right now. He's like this very talented writer, and he's like, well, everyone can write. I'm like, nope, no, they can't. Um, but because that ha like as a human being, you're almost like, well, everyone has this, but really I should be doing that. And what I teach on too is like you could put all the effort in and climb someone else's mountain, but let me tell you, you're going to get to the top of that mountain and you're going to be pretty disappointed because it has nothing to do with your heart and nothing to do with what you really want. And you're living at the top of their mountain and it sucks, right? And that's why like the journey is so unique, but we're all here to help each other. And I think what's nice about when you speak, it's the same thing as when someone else is doing what they were meant to do. It's not so much what you say, and it's not so much even how you say it. I mean, it is, but it's that you are completely unfiltered, no barriers. This is you, and you bring everyone in. And for those moments, people are able to be in that state where they can get excited and they can follow and listen because you are giving them the gift of your authenticity and they can then kind of reply back with their own. And I think that's what we're always trying to do, right? Because it, as people, um, but I also love that you were able to take this community vibe and turn it into something where you actually get to give that gift every time we get together, right? Because you have to work on your opening sequence and then your chat. So you're sharing the whole time and it's beautiful because and this is kind of a lesson for everyone, but if you can't find like let's say you want to speak every month or every second month in your community and you and it's not available to you, create it, right? Do it. Why not?
Yeah, you can create your own stage. That's definitely what I did when I took over Mo Mondays back in 2019. And the motivation wasn't quite the same with the little engines, but I think part of what you're saying, or my interpretation of it anyway, I think most of us are familiar with that quote. I think it was Maya Angelou, the one about that people won't necessarily remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Yes. 100%.
And that's one of the reasons why the thing is named the Little Engine Small Business Support Community. I mean, people remember that, whatever their interpretation of that idea is.
Yes.
And I've learned through trial and lots of error that, especially with how diverse our society in Canada is now, not everybody grew up with that story like I did, or the other one that the other hill that I'll die on, to be a little bit hyperbolic, is the tortoise and the hare. Those
Yes.
two stories, those are my drivetrains. But
Yes.
I've been able to, when I was given that feedback of, you're talking about this little engine that could, but you're getting blank stares. Half the audience doesn't even know what you're talking about. So I was able to take that feedback and then actually make those presentations stronger. But it helps people feel something. They remember it.
Yes.
Um, and from my end of it, I think it helps me anchor Krystal in reminding myself of who I am, what I believe in, what my values are,
Yep.
what I stand for, um, and to just continue to kind of stay rooted in that place and to hold myself accountable of, am I really communicating, acting, working, building from that
Yeah.
place, or am I acting, working, building, expecting based on some version of what I think I'm supposed to be doing? And it's a really tricky
It is.
balance.
Yep.
And as we're recording this, who knows when people will find it if they come to the recording, but we're still in January at the time that we're having this conversation. And I've really been really trying to reground myself of like, okay, Kev, you've got these pieces on all the pieces are on the board now.
Yep.
Your job for this next season, whatever that's going to be, is
Yep.
to really be that guy consistently and let go of that thinking mind, the ego mind. It just,
Yes.
all of the things that you need, they're here. Just go, just dig in, just
Yeah.
let
Well,
it rip,
building the
and then see what
focus, right?
happens.
Yeah. And I think so. My coach talks about this all the time. Like, and I'm very much like you because I mean, before we press record, we were like, we're passionate about this and this and this and this. And there's all these different pieces. And to your point, but you can't do everything all the time. You can't.
Yeah.
It's just impossible. And so focusing in on like somewhere between one and four things. I say one and four because I'm again, we're all entrepreneur A types, an overachiever. You're supposed to focus on one. I'm like, oh, one. I'm like, no, thank you. So four, one to four, wherever that is. And then look at everything you're doing and just see like, so I'll do this all this, like I'll do like a monthly audit and like, okay, I want to do this. What category, what bucket does this fit in? And
Mhm.
if it's not one of those four, maybe I just table that. Um, because the thing is like what they say, like master of all trades or jack of all trades, master of none, you whatever you focus on is going to get better, right? And so I think to like for you, it's speaking. I love like I'm trying to get more into presenting and speaking. Because what like that magic you have on stage, and same thing with like some of our friends like Ian Tyson. I'm very interested because I have the passion here, but when I get on stage, I very much seem like I'm um narrating something. That's the best way I could put it. My energy's not there. And so that's something I want to work on. But that's something you have, and you have worked on it for a long time, but it's such a gift. And I just think anything that you're going to do to get that to more people, I think two thumbs up from this camp.
Well, thank you. It's very nice of you to say that. I think that I was a little bit or maybe a lot more well formed as a presenter coming out of the gates later in life trying to speak than I might otherwise have been just because of the variety of my experience of being on the air and radio,
Yes.
emceeing more events than I can remember. Back when I used to be the track announcer at a Delaware Speedway, and you'd basically talk for 4 hours straight every Friday night, just doing play by play. You just learn how to think on your feet
Yeah.
and be in front of people, but shaping the metaphors and the stories and key points and all of that is a whole different craft that um, for however much longer I'm lucky enough to hang around, uh, I don't think that's something that I'm ever going to grow tired of trying to hone in on and
Yeah.
perfect. And then the other things that exist, part of what calls to me is to see if I can answer the challenge of building the teams and letting go of things that I think that I need to control and
Yes.
creating a culture and maybe maintaining a certain sort of expectation in terms of character and values and that sort of thing. But
Yep.
otherwise, um, eh, eh, confronting some of those things that I view myself as shortcomings. Um, so that's lots.
It's no,
There's lots.
for sure.
But you
So I
know
think
what's really cool is that this community that's being built, and I haven't been in a hurry. We're not big in terms of numbers yet, but that's not the point. The heart of it is picking up in intensity.
the
And
foundations, yes.
yeah, and there have been a number of times where I've realized I've got a question about something or whatever it might be, and I'll think, oh yeah, I mean, there's this community here. I can ask them,
Yeah.
and that's really fun, and the opportunities that that presents
Hmm.
going forward for all of us are really interesting to think about. But that's another conversation, maybe for another day.
Absolutely. Well, I can't believe how fast this has gone. But what I will say, the only thing I'll say that I think people can take away, and my husband talks about this all the time with his business as well. And I know I struggle with it, realtors struggle with it. I think anyone running a business struggles with this, where we think the delegation is tough. And really, at the end of the day, we want to be able to serve people, but be less important to the day to day, right? So, it really comes down to my coach calls it like a bit of a lesson in humility. Like we're not as unique and important as we think we are. That's number one. We all work with that. We're like, okay, but like, um, number two is that good enough might be good enough, right? So we're thinking everything has to be perfect, but to what end? Like, are you giving up your dreams so that something runs perfectly, or are we letting other people learn on their path? Um, and I guess my third thing is a question to you. If you could give business owners a couple of words of wisdom, and this is so again, we have realtors, we have entrepreneurs, business owners, something that you've learned along the way, or something that you think would be good advice, what would you say?
Do you mean just advice in general?
Well, advice about it could be about delegating, it could be about following your heart. Something that we talked about today would be
I
handy, but
certainly am
it's
not
up
going
to
to
you.
give anybody advice about delegating. While you were saying that part of it, I'm reminded I mentioned Dan Martell, who wrote Buy Back Your Time. I'm going to paraphrase this and I'll probably get it wrong, but says something like um, something done at 80%, like of what you might do by someone else, is 100% awesome.
I like
Um,
that.
yeah, and so that's one of the many things that I want to lean into. I've got a few phrases that I just hear myself saying all over or over and over again that I really believe to be true. One of them is We compare ourselves to what we think is perfect, even though we don't relate to it. What we
Interesting.
relate to is real,
Yes.
which is what most of us are most afraid to be. And I think that if we really, you've got to kind of be aware here, to just be conscious of people can sense more than ever. Uh, they brace instinctually when they feel a sales pitch coming on, or when they feel that someone is being, I'll say, maybe inauthentic.
Yep.
And if someone's being inauthentic, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's ill intent to it. I think a lot of times we put voices on. I came from the radio industry, and radio announcers have a certain way of talking that isn't how, like, you know, but it's a lot of it is we don't think that what we have to say in the way that we would say it is, good enough
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yep.
Um, I also hear myself saying a lot, we won't find what we treasure by following someone else's map.
Love that.
Or that you get to a point in your journey where you realize you've been listening to people who don't, following people who don't even really know where they're going, and listening to people who don't have much of value to say. And ultimately, it comes down to trusting your compass, which
Yes.
comes back to the heart of I think where we started. And maybe I hope those don't just sound like empty motivational slogans, but I think that the how to's, like they say in any kind of personal, the how will show itself as once
Yes.
you start moving forward. There are people like me and you and others, and when they see you working and they see you trying, we want to help, especially as Canadians, right?
Oh, 100%.
Um, so those solutions on the how to's of business are, especially if you can lean into networking and have relationships. I don't want to be so glib as to say that's the easy part, but it's that having the courage to know what really is calling to you and what's real
Yes.
to you, and are you expressing yourself in a way that is true to you, or is it some version of what you think it should be?
Yep.
And I have a lot of time for people like you and anyone else who, it's kind of like, I'm not really sure what I'm doing here, but I can't not do it. Like, so
That's
here I am.
but you know what? I think that those are probably very important words and lessons. So, I mean, it doesn't, and I think we could have this conversation with people on any walk of any journey. And most people will tell you that for the most part, even if they're doing what they love, they don't really know if they're doing it properly. You don't like no one has this like internal guide of how to do everything right. If you're succeeding in something and you kind of feel good about that, you could probably walk someone through like how to craft a great talk. But for the most part, I think we're all just kind of we're on this journey and it doesn't really end until it's over. So the arrival is way in the distance. It's the actual journey where you're learning and you're and getting all of the benefit and giving all of the benefit to other people. Um, and I think that's important for anyone as you're building your career. If you think someone else has it all together, you'd probably be surprised to know that they probably don't think that they do have it all together. They
Mm.
just seem like they have it all together to you.
Yeah. You've heard me say through the little engines, I believe there are two types of hills that we climb in life. The first is, or one of them anyway, those goals, dreams, desires, they're the ones that we choose to either climb or not, something that we want to try to achieve, or a way that we want to challenge ourselves. Some of us are prone to taking on hills like that, some of us aren't. But either way, you're going to get the hills that life is just going to give you as a consequence of being human. Health challenges,
Yes.
relationship challenges, financial challenges, things going on with our loved ones or in our communities. Or just that's just, and I, I've never come across anyone who's ever been able to get the deal of not having any of the second types of hills. And it's kind of cliche to say that, you never know what somebody else is going through, but we don't.
You don't.
And we assume
Definitely
that
don't.
we're the only ones who are messed up. And a lot of times I've come to find out that the person beside me that I'm judging myself against is just barely holding themselves together.
Well,
you know?
yeah, so we're always comparing, and for the most part, we're thinking everyone's doing way better than us. And we talk about that in real estate a lot because you could feel great about selling a house, and then you go on Instagram, and all of a sudden, everyone you've ever met is selling like 18 houses that week. It's and if they're honestly though, if you're listening and you are selling 18 houses a week, like we're so proud of you. But for the most part, it's not a thing. And um I will say for anyone watching the video, I seem like I'm like squirming. It is minus like 1,000 outside today. And so I'm next to my window for the heat, and the sun has decided that it's going to follow me. So no matter where I move, I'm like hidden in the sun. And I'm hesitant to like close the curtain because it's so cold. So we're just going to deal with this. This is authentic me has half of my face in the sun right now.
You could be doing worse than to have the sun shining down on you, Krystal.
100%, right? And that's the thing where we're always the whole point with this conversation is just to say to talk to someone who's awesome in the community. That's you today. Hi. And just get some tips, have a great conversation. Now, Kevin, how
Yes.
can someone get in touch either maybe someone wants to come to hear you speak or come to the Little Engines community. How can they do that?
NoScheduleMan.com has all of that.
Okay,
Or
so
if they see my name,
noscheduleman.com, all one word.com.
yeah, Little Engines, the opt-in for the community is on that site. Information about
Perfect.
NSM Brand Media is on that site. All of the event listings for this year for Little Engines Live is on that site. Information about my
No,
speaking.
yes,
That's the hub of all things Kevin Bulmer.
the
And if my name is,
noscheduleman.com.
yeah, No Schedule Man is easier for people to remember. If they see my name as part of the podcast listing, kevinbulmer.com will take you to the same place.
Fantastic. And when is the next live event?
March the 3rd, Monday, March 3rd
March the
in London.
3rd. That's exciting, guys. It will not be this cold out. So as Kevin said, so whenever you're listening, it is January 2025, which sounds like I'm making up numbers, but I'm not. It is January 2025. This is not Back to the Future. That's a real number. And it is like minus, I don't know, 17 outside right now. Who's to say? That's without the wind chill. Um, if you're listening to anything on this podcast, also in the middle of a challenge where I have to go outside for 30 minutes and go for a walk in the cold. So hence why I'm leaning into the temperature so heavily. But um, as far as coming out to Little Engines, it is amazing. Going to Little Engines Live. If you are listening and you're not in the London area, I know Kevin has some stuff in another community is it Trenton,
Well, that's,
potentially?
yeah, we
Or
still
it
haven't
was?
got there yet. We've
Okay.
tried a couple of times, but life has lifed.
There.
We
Okay.
are going to be doing a pop-up event as part of BizCon in Mississauga at the end of March.
That's exciting. Okay,
Yeah.
Mississauga. They're
So
coming for
we're
you.
we're going to grow, and but it doesn't always have to be the little engines. It
Right.
could be if I show up somewhere doing a workshop or giving a keynote talk or something like that.
Sure.
The Little Engines online community is always a way that people can stay in touch with me and then access a whole community of people like you. Um,
Fantastic.
so that's what
That's
I'm going to try to do is to connect more good hearts together and to see what we can do
amazing.
while we all fuel each other.
So needed. So Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. This has been fantastic. Um, Me and my sunny room here are so happy to have had you with us. And noscheduleman.com, Kevin Bulmer, thank you for joining us. Guys, this is Krystal Lucier, also known as your Home Sweet Home 519 Realtor. Thank you for listening. We're so happy you're here, and we will see you guys all very soon. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Krystal.